A house rises out of the lifeless, marshy earth. Looking up, it stares back at you through narrow eye-like windows. Outside, the air feels different. Sick, unhealthy. The trees in a prolonged state of decay. Inside awaits all the trappings of classic horror. Old books, creepy paintings, creepier twins, and a dark family secret peering around every dimly lit corner. This, of course, is Edgar Allan Poe's The Fall of the House of Usher. As an archetype for the horror genre, much has been said about Rodrick, his sister Madeline, and the house they both represent and dwell within. But the third character, Rodrick's childhood friend, the nameless narrator of this dark and haunting tale, has been criminally overlooked. Poe's chief goal in writing fiction was to create an effect in the mind of the reader. And through this surrogate narrator, the reader walks into the House of the Ushers and is so disturbed by its strange inhabitants that they almost don't realize that they too are losing their minds. A letter from an old but estranged friend draws the narrator to the house. Despite every piece of nature and architecture suggesting otherwise, he is resolved to spend several weeks within these disturbing walls. For the wild letter and the illness it describes cannot be ignored. It was the manner in which all of this was said, it was the heart in it, which did not allow me to say no. Poe knows that we too cannot say no. True crime, Halloween, haunted houses, low-budget films, high-budget TV shows, video games, the works of Poe, the death of Poe, the evidence is all around us. We all answer the letter. We all want to see what's behind that front door. Once inside, the house immediately begins to affect the narrator's psyche. Much that I met on the way added, I do not know how, to the strangeness of which I have already spoken. While the objects around me, the dark wall coverings, the blackness of the floors, and the things brought home from long-forgotten wars, while these things were like the things I had known since I was a baby, while I admitted that all this was only what I had expected, I was still surprised at the strange ideas which grew in my mind from these simple things. Usher attributes his deteriorating health to fear and terror, specifically the fear of his house, which, even though he believes it might be harming him, he hasn't been able to leave for many years. Usher even theorizes that the decaying plants and crumbling stones of the house hold a power over him, further poisoning his mind. There's also the fear of being the last of his family line, compounded with the fear of losing his beloved twin sister Madeline. Of these potential causes, only the house has any direct bearing on the narrator's state of mind. He is, of course, not an usher, and while his first view of Madeline is terrifying, he does his best to avoid even mentioning her during the rest of his stay. But another source of terror descends on the narrator: art. I shall always remember the hours I spent with the master of the House of Usher, yet I would fail in any attempt to give an idea of the true character of the things we did together. There was a strange light over everything. The paintings which he had made me tremble, though I do not know why. To tell of them is beyond the power of written words. If ever a man painted an idea, that man was Rodrick Usher. For me at least, there came out of his pictures a sense of fear and wonder. Besides tomb paintings, Rodrick's song, The Haunted Palace, convinces the narrator that Usher knows his mind is weakening. Additionally, Usher spends hours each day studying wild books that had fed the sick man's mind for years. Whether these books drove him to madness or his madness drove him to these books is debatable. What's certain, though, is that the use of art as a maddening device is particularly interesting when you remember that you, as the reader, are engaging with a piece of art. But soon the exposure to the macabre extends further into the realm of reality. After the Lady Madeline dies, the narrator personally helps carry her into the vault and sleeps just above the part of the house where she's interred. I felt his condition slowly but certainly gaining power over me. I felt that his wild ideas were becoming fixed in my own mind. Barely a week after Madeline was placed in the vault, the narrator's nerves nearly break. At first, he couldn't explain Usher's strange behavior as he sat looking at nothing for hours, as if listening to some sound I could not hear. But before long, the narrator's heightened senses also began to wage war with his own mind. A trembling I could not stop filled my body, and fear without reason caught my heart. I sat up, looking into the darkness of my room, listening, I do not know why, to certain low sounds which came when the storm was quiet. He hears the light step of Usher before Usher's even reached his door. Once they are together, the narrator tries to pass off Usher's wild nerves as a byproduct of the surreal storm outside. You shall not look out at this, I said to Usher as I led him from the window to a seat. This appearance, which surprises you so, has been seen in other places too. Perhaps the lake is the cause. Let us close this window. Attempting to find a remedy for their collective psyche, the two turn to art. The narrator picks up the only book within reach. As he reads, the sounds described in the story faintly echo up to his bedchamber. The smashed timbers, the agonized animal cry, the ringing of iron falling onto stone. All of these are heard not just by Usher, but by the reader. Completely unnerved, the narrator rushes to Usher, who exclaims, "Yes," he said, "I heard it. Many minutes, many hours, many days have I heard it, but I did not dare to speak." The collective madness coalesces as Usher screams, "We have put her living in the vault." Lady Madeline slowly opens the door, and with the last of her mortal strength, attacks her brother. At the start of the story, Rodrick confides, "I feel that the time will soon arrive when I must lose my life and my mind and my soul together in some last battle with that horrible enemy, fear." In the end, Rodrick's premonition proves true. The narrator concludes, he too was dead, killed by his own fear. The narrator runs from the property, and by the light of a blood-red moon, sees the House of Usher crack apart and fall to the earth. As the great collector and scholar of American ghost stories Colin Dickey highlights, it is, of course, a common trope in ghost tales and horror films. We know the outlines of the story, we tell it to spook our friends, but we haven't really listened. The mistake only becomes apparent once it's too late. This is true both for the characters within a story and for us, the audience of readers or viewers. Ghostly narratives carry lessons for us too, even if we're not in imminent danger. Poe didn't set out to leave his readers with moral lessons, but that doesn't mean we can't find meaning from reading his work. This is a story about madness, so it's worth taking a second to talk about how we talk about madness. Characters with what would now be classified as mental illnesses have often been used by Poe and others as villains, lunatics, murderers, and societal outcasts. Obviously, this is a problematic characterization. Recently, I came across the literary critic Maria Masuko's argument of madness as woundedness. Originally, I intended this part of the video to be a sort of disclaimer to remind all of us that while we shouldn't hold Poe to our modern medical understanding of madness, we have progressed into a more empathetic way of discussing mental health, and we should embrace this approach as we continue to move forward. But the closer I looked at Usher, the more I realized that while there are some dated descriptions of madness, the narrator, and to an extent the reader, being so susceptible to madness is in a way a form of empathy. We are not the perfectly sane individual gawking at the crazed other. We are instead on the threshold of mental stability, barely escaping before the house comes crashing down upon us. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about Poe, check out these videos listed here and leave any questions or comments down below. Thank you again, and happy reading.